welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. I'll be your astrologer today. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys are doing well and enjoying your Tuesday. I'm back at it with another video, and we're going to be doing a part 2 and taking a look at this up and coming Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces. I'm calling this The Truth Shall Set You Free. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, click that bell button below. This subscribes you to my channel. You help my channel grow, and also you'll get alerts as to when I have new videos. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, utilizing tarot and astrology to try to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Make sure you guys give me a thumbs up if you like this video, share it on your social media, and leave me a comment below on how this has manifested for you so far. Okay, well, you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I almost kind of feel like talking about this aspect, especially around the holidays, I kind of feel like I am just handing out everybody coal. So I don't want you guys to perceive this as a bad or a negative video. But if you guys go back and you take a look at the first video that I did on the Jupiter-Saturn square, this was back in, like, I want to say August. The aspect took place around mid-August, but we're seeing it happen several times due to retrogrades. So if you want a refresher, go and check that video out from earlier this summer. I call this part 2 because we're seeing the Jupiter-Saturn square again. This time it's a little bit different. We're going to explain and kind of get into how this might manifest for you guys, how to navigate this challenging or tricky transit. And even though it's not hitting until December 24th, we are now starting to feel it now that Jupiter is within 2 degrees of the square to Saturn. So I am filming this for you guys on obviously the 10th. That's when you guys are watching it, if you're watching it live. So just a heads up, this is going to be in the air for the better part of the next 2 weeks. Now, it's not unusual for us to see a aspect happen several times, especially with outer planets. Kind of similar to like this Mercury retrograde, where we've seen a number of squares between Saturn and oppositions to Jupiter. You know, it's just going to kind of unfold over time. And the truth is, this is the second of what will be 3 Jupiter-Saturn squares. The next one's not going to be taking place until, next summer. It's going to be around June 15th, 2025. That'll be taking place featuring Jupiter in a new sign. It'll be in the sign of Cancer in its exaltation. And Saturn as well as Neptune are going to be in close proximity. They're going to be conjunct, not exact, in the sign of Aries. So, I'm going to save a video, a later video for that in the future because it's going to have a different vibe. I kind of want to wait and see what happens with Saturn getting into Aries as well. But just maybe mark on your calendars, not only are you feeling the pressure in the month of December 2024, but the grand finale is going to be kind of coming up for you guys in June of 2025. All right, so essentially the square that's happening is between Jupiter, which is retrograde in the sign of Gemini, and Saturn, which is now direct in the sign of Pisces. So these are both mutable signs. Mutable signs represent change, shifts. Gemini is all about communication, learning, traveling. It can also be about developments when it comes to gadgets and media and technology. Communications, just in a nutshell, is generally kind of Gemini. And then we've got Saturn in Pisces, which is definitely much more emotional, sensitive, behind the scenes. It has manifested for a lot of things revolving around clarity, issues with clarity, especially Saturn moving through a Neptunian sign. And this exact square, let me show it to you guys now, is not going to be until the 24th. So this is a couple weeks away still, but we're feeling it. And just in time for Christmas, if you guys celebrate Christmas, yeah, it looks like there may be some people that are like a little disappointed maybe with their holiday or their Christmas gifts, or maybe even with travel. Certainly whenever we see squares do seem to indicate that there is some kind of tension that's going on. It is pushing us to kind of reconcile and try to find a middle ground or make a move. So we'll talk about why this has been kind of difficult in just a second. But for any of you guys who have any personal planetary placements in the mutable signs, okay, especially Gemini or Pisces, but if you have anything around 13 to 15 degrees, you are really feeling the effects of the square because the square is happening at 14. All right, so take a look at your chart, see if you have anything around 13 to 15, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. You guys are going to be feeling that. Sun, moon, and rising especially. I would also say those of you guys who are ruled by Jupiter especially, so my Pisces and my Sagittarius risings, you guys are really feeling the effects of Saturn, although you're trying to push Saturn to kind of evolve in some way. And those of you guys who are Saturn ruled, so I'm talking to my Capricorns, my Aquariuses, you guys are feeling the effects also because Jupiter is squaring your chart ruler. So just be mindful. If you guys hang out to the end, I'll take you through the 12 rising signs. I'll give you a little food for thought on this square and things to be kind of mindful of as we are going through this aspect later this month. Now, essentially the effects of this transit in a nutshell, right? We've got some tension or some friction between expansion, Jupiter, and contraction, Saturn. So that's going to be the theme. You know, you guys might want to think back to what was happening for you in August of this year and where you were seeing some tension between these two particular areas of your chart. Jupiter in Gemini is all about expanding our minds. It's also about communication and social networks. So it's like the universe is like giving us a green light to explore new ideas and new connections. However, Jupiter is retrograde, and this is something we did not see over the summer. Jupiter was direct. It was able to be, you know, kind of external and communicating and connecting, while Saturn was retrograde. So it's complex. The aspect is complex in a number of ways. I think that for me, you know, Jupiter is trying to pull away from Saturn. So it means that we're trying to open our minds. We're trying to, you know, kind of expand communication, maybe expand learning or traveling. But we've been limited, or it's almost like Saturn has had a lasso on just how much we can say, what we can think, where we can go, what we can do. It's also complex because, you know, this time around, now Saturn is direct. So Saturn's going to have a little bit more of a handle, I guess I would say, on Jupiter because Jupiter is now turning inward. So it's going to be more about this reviewing, reworking, this internal dialogue that we're having with ourselves even. You know, I've caught myself doing it several times throughout this year, being like, what is the blockage? Where is it coming from? What is the problem? I can't see it, you know, and that's very Saturn and Pisces. But there's also some challenges because Jupiter is not in the superior position. So Saturn's basically running the show, just to make it very simple. It's direct, it's in a superior position where it's kind of dominating and not allowing Jupiter to grow. So it is possible that this particular square could definitely really reinforce the need to really be doing our Saturn work in the Pisces area of our chart. And when I say that, I mean that we have to really kind of take a look at what are the themes of Saturn: responsibility, commitment, timing, maturity, you know, sometimes delays and setbacks. And then in the sign of Pisces, it's emotionally, right? It is about our beliefs. It is going to be about our vision, our dreams, and everything revolving around spirituality, religion, global kind of patterns and themes, especially when it comes to immigration, religion. Pisces rules over anything that is about giving to those in need. So it can be people who are homeless or people who are lost or, you know, seeking asylum. Mental health, medical kind of related things, especially connected to hospitals, pharmaceuticals. These are all kind of like Pisces related things. So when we see this square, you know, Saturn is really bringing a sense of limitation to Jupiter. And it's saying like, you need more discipline. And it's also really a call to kind of ground out our dreamy aspirations and make them into something that's tangible. It says, make it real. My last video, I talked about how, you know, I have interpreted this square as kind of like the, you know, the best blessings have been some unanswered prayers. You know, Jupiter has associations with Pisces traditionally. It's its traditional ruler, and it represents the spiritual, emotional body, that connection to a higher realm, that connection to something bigger than ourselves, and trust in the universe. So a lot of us have probably really been trying over the last like 6 months or so to be reading more, learning more, to be communicating more with Jupiter and Gemini. Maybe we've been listening to self-help podcasts. Maybe we've been trying to learn a new language. Maybe we've been trying to plan a trip or a move. But we have felt like that's all been thwarted basically because of Saturn and Pisces. We have to, stay, I think, really in alignment with our beliefs. And we need to be mindful of having spiritual practices, meditation, reflection, taking time to journal, learning to sleep on something, if it's not clear to us when it comes to making a decision, or learning to wait and see, learning to listen rather than just talking. That's definitely a theme with Jupiter and Gemini square Saturn and Pisces. I do feel like this is going to be bringing up also mental agitation versus emotional depth. Man, Jupiter and Gemini, to me, it feels like very like we can't focus, or we are juggling way too many things, or we're overly stimulated, or there's too much information that's kind of coming in. Versus Saturn and Pisces, which wants us to really get still. It wants us to really focus on what our emotions are telling us and kind of ground that out. So these are very kind of conflicting energies, where one is just kind of like hyperactive and the other one's kind of just wanting to kind of slow its roll and pause and reflect for a little bit. So this square naturally creates like a tug of war between our desire for intellectual freedom with Jupiter and Gemini and our need for emotional and spiritual maturity in Saturn and Pisces. I also see this as like feeling that our thoughts are scattered. And because our thoughts are so scattered, we're having to really lean into Saturn and Pisces and really focus on what our emotions are telling us, and not getting kind of wrapped up in all of the information, the communication, the learning, the travel. Like, we're really learning to kind of silence our minds. So if you guys have felt like it's been hard to focus, or you've had like a shorter attention span than usual, I am going to assume that this is why, because this has definitely been affecting a lot of people in that way. Now, Jupiter is a planet that deals with opportunity. This is a planet that is about wealth and growth and travel and abundance, versus Saturn, which can be seen as like a speed bump, a stop sign. It can be about delays and limitations or blockages. So for a lot of us, this can also feel like it's about opportunity or obstacles. And, Jupiter offers us plenty of opportunities, and Saturn is kind of presenting obstacles for us with the square, or lessons that we need to learn. And I think this is before we can fully embrace those opportunities. You might feel or kind of find like big ideas are clashing with your, kind of practical limitations. It could be scheduling issues, delays, taking longer to kind of like comprehend or learn something. That's pretty common when you see the square between these two signs. But it's also going to be about truth versus illusion. And I remember looking at these aspects in early 2024, earlier this year, and I was like, a lot of it's going to be about whether or not we can tell the truth, if we can speak our truth. And granted, with mutable squares, everybody's going to have a different belief system. They're going to have a different background. They're going to come from different kind of educational, places and experiences, and people communicate in a different way. So the mutable squares do represent this challenge in kind of deciphering what is truth and what is illusion. I think Jupiter and Gemini's influence can be about a quest for truth, but Pisces might blur the lines with idealism or illusion. And this really challenges us to discern what's real from what's just a manipulation, what is a projection, or what is potentially just a dream. Now, expect communication challenges with this, and I think that's kind of, one of the layers as to why we're having communication challenges. Obviously, December is kind of riddled with a Mercury retrograde, and that is impacting this aspect as well. Although when we see the square at the end of December, Jupiter will still be in opposition to Mercury, but Mercury will be direct. So we're going to start to see that kind of die down a little bit. Anyway, communication challenges. So we can expect some friction in communication, especially with Jupiter being in a mercurial sign. Jupiter wants to push for openness, and Saturn might feel like it wants to impose restrictions and delays, and this could lead to misunderstandings, delays in progress, or projects. It can also mean that there is some kind of limitation to how we communicate and what we share with other people. So like, lots of out of office emails, I am not responding to emails over the holiday, kind of people's frame of mind. People who are also finding it difficult or challenging, I would say, to connect, travel, do business, make plans. That's definitely something that I have been seeing for some time with kind of this, this up and coming square. Now, for the collective impact and how this is going to be affecting us all on like a more of a global stage, I definitely feel like the Jupiter-Saturn square so far has manifested in shifts in society. I feel like collectively, this transit brings a push towards reevaluating how we communicate ideas, laws, and philosophy, right? Jupiter and Gemini. Jupiter is about laws, by the way. So it's about how we're communicating and expressing those ideas. And obviously it's been tension between, progressive thoughts and traditional structures. Jupiter is very progressive. It is about keeping an open mind in Gemini, considering two different perspectives. It can be about more freedom. It can be about democracy. It can also be about freedom of speech. Versus Saturn in Pisces, which can have much more of like a rigidness. It can also mean that it's more traditional, or it's a little bit more old school, more conservative. And it literally, in my opinion, has manifested as this tension between, at least here in the United States, the political parties and their belief systems and their philosophy and how they've been going about in 2024, their process of kind of like the presidential race. So it's going to be interesting to see how this manifests this time around. I mean, I feel like we may see more of a clash between the conflicts of people who identify with one particular party. We're also probably going to see lots of cultural and ideological conflicts as well. We definitely see a lot of debate around truth whenever we see Jupiter square Saturn. It doesn't matter what sign it's in, but especially when it's in Gemini, I think that there's a need to feel like we can speak out, we can share, we can, kind of give some people a different perspective. And Gemini could be like, different news networks. It could be different newspapers, new media outlets. It could be social media, anything that you hold in your hand, right? Where you get your news is very Jupiter and Gemini. And the square to Saturn is definitely about where, society may be feeling like they're questioning where we're heading versus where we've been, right? And, debates, I think, around the balance of individual rights and collective responsibilities. That's a huge theme with Jupiter square Saturn. Saturn in Pisces can be about wrapping things up, wrapping up what has happened, completing that, and kind of coming to terms with things emotionally. And Pisces is a water sign, so it definitely can be on a very emotional level that we're kind of finally saying, okay, it's time to finally release this and let this thing go. Versus the square to Jupiter, which is now retrograde, is we're reflecting on, okay, we have to kind of deal with the past. We have to wrap some things up. Maybe we have to get closure before we move forward, before we start talking about making plans or kind of moving into the future. Now, in terms of global communication, on a global scale, I think that this could definitely manifest as international relations and, some tension going on with international relations where some are going to be pushing for new dialogues and, more about openness and being able to kind of connect and communicate and learn from one another. Even if we speak different languages, we come from different backgrounds, we have different philosophies or laws, versus we're going to see some, I think, countries where there's going to be resistance. And we're going to see that, they're resisting, any kind of growth or change, and they're wanting to kind of stay with their established norms or policies. So it could manifest as, a difficulty in being able to kind of bridge the gaps in, distance or communications with some of these particular, countries. Now, when it comes to navigating this transit, I really feel like the key with squares is to expect the tension, but learn how to use that to help you get to where you want to go, right? And in order to do that in mutable signs, we have to embrace flexibility. I think that is the key here. Gemini is very open-minded. Pisces is very sensitive. I do feel like this is about being adaptable with Jupiter and Gemini and how you're thinking. And if you can do that, it will serve you very well. But don't cling too tightly to one idea with Saturn and Pisces. Be open to learning and realize that you have the ability to change your mind. You don't have to make a decision right now. You could say, let's wait and see, or I'll get back to you, or let me do some research, and then I'll follow up. We don't want to be too rigid when it comes to our faith, our belief systems, even how we're learning or what we're being told. I think a lot of this is going to be about information and news and media, and whether or not we feel like we can kind of trust some of the information that's coming out in December. This is also about balancing your dreams with a sense of reality. Because Saturn's energy really wants us, with it being direct, to ground out our visions. It wants us to, really focus on our dreams and have big dreams, but really now is the time to make concrete plans or structures to achieve them. Saturn is like pouring the concrete pad before you build the house, right? You need to have that strong foundation. So we need to have a strong, Saturn in order to allow Jupiter to grow. Saturn in Pisces could be a good emotional kind of hold on things, or learning to be more compassionate, more sensitive. We're willing to forgive. Maybe we don't forget, but we can kind of learn to be more mature with Saturn and say, okay, you know what, I forgive you. How can we discuss moving forward, rather than kind of getting lost in this endless loop of like rehashing the past, because that will take away from the productivity, I think, with Jupiter square Saturn there. Now, be mindful of your communication, obviously, how you communicate. This is definitely an aspect where I have found that there can be a lot of foot in the mouth moments. So think before you speak or write, especially on social platforms. Now, the reason why I think this one might slap a little bit harder than the one that we had in August is because Jupiter is retrograde now. So maybe we are reviewing and thinking about some of the things that we have said, some of the places that we have been. We are returning to books that we started that we did not finish. We are revisiting old lessons and things that we've learned. And we're able to kind of look at it in a much more mature or sober way. But there can be consequences with squares. So, with Jupiter retrograde, something that you say on Twitter, something you say on YouTube, some comment you make to somebody, can definitely have some sense of repercussion. And especially for those of you guys who have been kind of following along since last time, in summer of 2024, when we had these squares, this is when we were starting to see people in parts of Europe that were getting persecuted and getting arrested for making statements and comments on social media. That was like the height of when this started happening. This time around, now with Saturn direct squared Jupiter retrograde, I do fear that we could see some people not only get reprimanded and potentially be facing some kind of consequence. Obviously, Saturn in Pisces quite literally is jail. Especially if you're speaking out, you're talking about immigration matters, that's Saturn in Pisces, religious matters, Saturn in Pisces, anything revolving around some maybe negative talk or criticism, especially of like superiors. Like Saturn can be government leaders, it can be older people. So if we're saying things where we're criticizing and we are, kind of being either hateful or uneducated or not aware, or maybe even, malinformed, there can be consequences. And I do think that some people will notice that we're going to see an uptick of like people getting shadow banned, people not having as much growth in their social media, people who are also not getting as much traction on like websites and things like that. Because of what's coming up, what's being exposed. A lot of these squares to Jupiter is going to be about information being exposed on social media. And it can be things that people have said in the past. Like I've noticed the last 6 months, since this last square, there's been a lot of like people getting canceled still, because old tweets are coming up, or people saying they felt a certain way about their political or their religious beliefs, or making statements. And then it's coming back up, down the road. That's like, hey, like you're preaching this thing, or you're saying this thing, or you're for promoting this law or this change. But in reality, like you didn't do this you didn't agree with this in the past, or now you're changing course with Jupiter retrograde with what you believe in. So you're going to see a lot of hypocrites throughout this process. I think it's crazy. I've seen a lot of this already. I do feel like the positive side of this is that Jupiter is about speaking the truth. And I think maybe this will manifest as people who felt like they couldn't speak out about certain things in the past, or people who maybe were manipulated or coerced or guilted into following certain agendas, parroting certain things online, saying certain things, about their belief systems, now are realizing that they may not be grounded in reality. They may not be honest. They may not be fair. And now we're going to see some people changing course. Couple examples, right? So we see Mark Zuckerberg, who has been really vocal about saying he now wants to be involved in the new administration in the United States in 2025, and wants to be involved in being able to have freedom of speech. And, he was entangled obviously with Facebook and Meta and like the interaction with the US government and censorship over, political stuff, pharmaceutical beliefs, things in regards to like mandates and health. We've got Jeffrey Bezos, who is heavily, obviously he's known as basically one of the founders of Amazon, but he has his hands in some media outlets, and he's got his hands, I think, on some big newspapers. And now he's coming out saying, he wants to be involved with the next administration and talk to people, and that the press is no longer the enemy of the people, and that now he wants to have some kind of influence on changing the narrative out in the world. I'm not saying I agree with either one of these people. Personally, I wouldn't trust them any further than I could throw them. That's just me. But I do think it's a good example of where people are changing course in terms of their beliefs when it comes to censorship or oversight or kind of like navigating the responsibility for the masses at Saturn and Pisces. We have also seen recently, I was looking at, I think it was Mayor Adams in New York City, who I saw a bunch of clips online where they were playing stuff over like the last 5 years where he was very vocal because, he's a Democrat, and he was saying, we want to be, a city that's known for its diversity. We want to welcome people who are, looking for a safe space. We want to promote a multitude of different cultures and values. And like, we want that in New York City. Fast forward to the last month or two, he's now being seen on TV where he's being questioned by the media and the press, and they're asking him about his stance now. And now he's trying to find ways basically to circumvent some of the laws regarding asylum and, having a safe space in New York City for immigration. He's made several comments about concerns about crime and the rights and the protection of citizens in New York City. He came out swinging and was like, "You're not going to cancel me. What are you going to do?" I mean, it's a mind-blowing clip to watch. Because now all of a sudden he's done like a 180 and he's changing direction in terms of his beliefs and his philosophy about immigration and also leadership. That's very Saturn, right? So it's like insane to see some of this stuff. And so that in itself shows you that, Jupiter retrograde is this change of the narrative, change of the media, change of the news, change of some of the radios. I mean, we're even seeing it with like some news hosts and anchors and people in like TV that are now kind of changing their course and their direction. It seems less divided maybe than it was before. And it's looking in its retrograde at Saturn. So it recognizes and realizes that this is the end basically of, separating and dividing with words and through media. And it's recognizing now that there is now a shift that's happening in power. Saturn is direct. So, I mean, it's quite literal, and there's a million different examples I can give you, but those are just a few of them. I think that the Saturn-Jupiter square personally has taught me, and I have it in opposition natally, so I feel like I should know this by now, but it's taken me a little bit of time to get it. The Jupiter-Saturn square has taught me that we need to have patience, and that if we want things to be solid, if we want to lay plans, if we want to be able to kind of plan things into the future, we have to be patient. And I think patience is key with this aspect. Saturn's lessons are all about timing and discipline. So if you're feeling blocked right now, it might be the universe asking you to prepare more thoroughly, right? To get solid in the Pisces area of your chart, maybe to reconsider or rethink or strategize what's going on with the Gemini area of your chart. And then it may not be time for that area to expand or grow. Quite literally, Saturn stunts Jupiter's growth. It says, nope, you've expanded enough. Now it's time to go back. The good news also is that, in the second half of 2025, we will see Jupiter go into Cancer. So it'll be in its exaltation in the fall, kind of like October 2025. We're going to see Jupiter trine Saturn. So I'm going to tell all of you guys, if you practice patience, if you take your time, if you don't rush through things, if you're willing to review things, you will be rewarded, because it looks like we have to kind of go through both of this square now in December and then another one in June of 25 before we really reap the benefits of Jupiter trine Saturn. And that's a really fortuitous kind of aspect. So that's more next year. For right now, I would just encourage you guys to be patient. Definitely embrace spiritual growth. And I'm not saying that because this is an astrology channel and like all that stuff. I'm saying that because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. Okay, so it is the dispositor. So we've got the dispositor squaring Saturn in this sign. So Jupiter being involved in the square is saying, hold on, we have to rethink, rework, return, and we need to reflect before we speak. And this could be something as simple as like you're going back to your morning pages. You are going to go back into, the habit of walking, in the evenings and, calling a friend. You are going to return to meditation practice. You are going to go back and finish that book on mindfulness, whatever. Something like that has to happen. And I think a lot of this is about personal growth and spiritual depth. So consider some of these like introspective practices. That's how you work with Saturn in Pisces to help manage the tension of kind of like expansive thoughts and also like motor brain. For a lot of us, I think that there's been this just big news story after news story after news story with Jupiter and Gemini, and we feel like we're just kind of like mentally fried, and it's really impacted our ability to sleep with Saturn and Pisces, to have peace, to have good mental health, like all that stuff. It can also be a time to really manage your screen time. I would literally say, Saturn and Pisces is about screen time management. And learning to like put our phone down or not be so overly emotionally impacted or influenced based off of what's kind of going on with the news cycle. Definitely work with community and try to collaborate with other people. I think that's another key because Jupiter is in the sign of our communities. It's our neighborhood, it's our friends, it's our cousins and aunts and uncles and siblings. And it's about connecting with some of these people, even if it's as simple as having a weekly phone call or, a monthly get together. This is about creating community where we can learn and we can teach from one another. So this transit's actually good for learning and growth and sharing through experience with others, especially if it's in an area or a subject of things that we don't know anything about. Saturn in Pisces could literally represent like this unknowing or not being experienced. And so learning to say, hey, talk to me about it. Tell me more. Tell me your story. Or how do you do this? And like learning to be vulnerable and acknowledging and admitting that sometimes we don't have all of the answers with Jupiter retrograde. Now, the actual square is going to be at 14 degrees. And so, 14 is the degree that in degree astrology deals with Taurus. So it is like banks, money, wallets, food, things revolving around self-esteem, stability, resources. These are the kind of things that we see. So there's definitely a hit coming with the square for these particular topics. Well, in August, we saw a pretty significant kind of downturn that was kind of happening with the stock market here in the United States. But we have seen ripple effects of all kinds of other financial things that are going haywire all over the world. It's not just limited to here. So it's interesting to see the square because I don't think it's going to bode well for the markets at the end of the year. I think that while this is happening, we see some other things in the sky, like a Mars retrograde, which definitely, has an impact on our love lives, but also in gambling and things pertaining to the stock market. Anything speculative is slowing down. It's also in opposition to Pluto. So there is some tension going on, which is kind of furthering hitting that particular aspect. And we will be coming into a Venus square Uranus, which does indicate that there's about to be some major switch ups, changes, and pressure in regards to financial stability and relationships. So all those three things at one time definitely does kind of point to there being a lot of major financial changes, some pressure, and maybe even some upsets around the time of the square on the 24th. Now, when we look at this though, and I read the Sabian symbols, I always read by rounding up. So this is going to be 14 degrees and 1, okay, on each side. So we're going to read 15 degrees of Gemini and 15 degrees of Pisces. And remember that the Sabian symbols give us a little bit more, I think, like, they give us a little bit more like food for thought on other ways to kind of like look at this particular degree. So for Gemini 15, this is two Dutch children talking. And the theme is common interests. So the symbol speaks to the vicarious sharing of experiences, planning and creative exploration of perceived possibilities and opportunities. The image of two Dutch children talking alludes to a common tendency of individuals to seek out others who share similar backgrounds, values, and interests. Their attempt to establish friendships and alliances will build self-confidence and facilitate success. On a practical level, this image can symbolize communication may not be understood by others speaking Dutch. It can also represent behind-the-scenes discussions of small groups or cliques that are secret, confidential, and not open to the public. At its highest, the symbol represents a special capacity for self-establishment in a broad variety of situations as the result of highly developed human relation skills and social sensitivity. Watch for clannishness and separatism or the inability to clearly communicate thoughts and ideas. Interesting that, the Sabian symbol obviously is 15, so it's going to have a little bit of like a Gemini flare, but Jupiter is retrograde, which in itself in this sign would mean reevaluating, rethinking about, some kind of issues with communication and ideas. So the accent is on communications and talking things over. You may feel the need to seek advice from someone who has experience in handling the situation you're trying to understand. Your greatest advantage lies in being discreet and not repeating everything you hear. If you have to get something off your chest, seek someone out who you trust not to betray your confidence or hear you out. Guard against failing to communicate important piece of information clearly and fully. Be careful not to reveal that you are, reveal more than you should to gossip. Okay, so it could be about gossiping. Stepping stones are communication, clarification, discussion, sharing experiences, planning, exploration of ideas, commonality, and friendship. But in general, I think that this is just also, it's a symbol that it's about communication and cultural exchange. Obviously, it's in Dutch, and they're communicating with each other because that's what's familiar to them and other people may not understand. It can also be about the innocence or the simplicity of understanding between different perspective or backgrounds as well. So we're working on that. We're reflecting on that. Maybe where we get too caught up in our own thoughts, our own ideas, or our own kind of little, bubble, and we're not able to see the bigger picture and how other people perceive things or whether or not they understand. Then we look at 15 degrees of Pisces. Okay, so this is an officer preparing to drill his men. The theme is making the best of it. The symbol speaks of a desire to avoid consequences by shifting responsibility or blame upward or downward in a hierarchy or authority. The image of an officer preparing to drill his men describes one of life's predicaments that is difficult, if not impossible, to get out of easily. And it stresses the importance of making the best of it in those situations that can't be avoided or immediately resolved by finding some higher value or purpose in the experience. Every individual gets out of life what he is willing to put into it. At its highest, the symbol should represent a can-do attitude and a knack for making every experience a profitable adventure. Watch for lack of enthusiasm and constant complaining about one's lot or how life is so unfair. The accent is on ingenuity and self-discipline. You could resent being where you are, trying to find a place for yourself that holds a greater potential for growth. Your greatest advantage lies in creating your own opportunities. Think positive about the situation that you're stuck in. When life gives you lemons, get out the sugar and water. Guard against looking at the dark side of things. Don't whine and complain that you're being taken advantage of against your wishes. Life is what you make of it. So stepping stones are rehearsal, practice, instruction, exercise, lesson, correctness, efficiency, system, precision, organization, discipline, preparation, planning, maneuver, and workout. So these two energies are at odds with each other. For me, I think that this is a symbol that really kind of it evokes ideas of discipline and preparation of challenges and the need, to kind of strategize when it comes to facing life's battles and the importance of leadership amidst chaos, which is such a hot topic with Saturn and Pisces. A lot of people are like, where is the leadership, or where are we going, or what are we doing? And I do feel like, for me personally, the Jupiter-Saturn square has been about catching myself when I'm complaining about things and being like, oh, this isn't working, or this isn't fair, or this isn't good enough. And I try to catch myself and be like, why are you complaining about this? Why are you not being grateful? And I've been really, really on top of it like the last month or two. As soon as now those thoughts start creeping in, I stop and I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit reset. And now I'm going to, take a time to be really conscious and aware of all the things I am thankful for. And I think I used this example in the last video, but I was kind of saying like, even if it's like the smallest trivial things, like maybe you are, feeling as if you want to reach a certain goal or you want to complete something or, there's something that you want. And you're really beating yourself up over it, right? It could mean, you're wanting to weigh a certain amount or you're wanting to reach a certain salary or you're complaining about, not having like, a new enough car. But in reality, there are some people out there who would give anything to have their health and have their body fully functional and like weigh what you weigh. There would be somebody out there who would kill to have the salary that you're currently making. There's somebody out there taking the bus to work and they don't have the luxury of complaining about not having a new car. So I use these examples to put it in perspective because the things that we are complaining about sometimes are the things that we should be showing, our gratefulness for because other people do not have the luxuries that we have. So be grateful, try to be optimistic, try to see some of the challenges right now as a lesson or an example for the fact that hard work, dedication, patience, and commitment can really get us to where we need to go. And the dissatisfaction that comes from the square can be utilized as the gas to be able to motivate us to make a change. We just have to stop making excuses, right? And feeling victimized. Certainly, squares to Saturn and Pisces has definitely been about kind of like victim mentality. Now I think about, I always give you guys like my thoughts. So now this is the my thoughts portion of the video. My thoughts are, I go back in time to September of this year when we saw the very first Pisces eclipse that will be a part of the new nodal eclipses moving forward in 2025. And we saw an eclipse that was like right around 25 degrees. So it was between Saturn, which was limiting, and Neptune, which is kind of like dissolving. And that particular eclipse, even though it was wide, was still in a square to Jupiter. So it was kind of saying like, okay, here's some heavy emotional stuff coming through, some things that's been kind of brewing subconsciously, things that we're afraid of, self-undoing habits, big emotions. And that particular eclipse was highlighting the Jupiter-Saturn square, right? The ruler is Jupiter, and it is the dispositor of Saturn, and there was some friction there. So it was kind of saying like, stop complaining about things. Or if you want to actually travel, if you want to learn, if you want to expand, you have to be willing to kind of look at what's kind of holding you back subconsciously or what the block is or what the delay is. And so that has really been in the air, really, since the first square in August, the Pisces eclipse in September. We got a little bit of a break here recently in October and November, but now it's coming back. And I think that I would really look at, what you have been struggling with over the last 6 months and where maybe there was some sense of awareness around September that was like, this thing's got to go, or, this is now I'm figuring out what's blocking me, or this is what emotions are kind of getting in the way and it's hindering me. Saturn is going to require us to really be in tune with some of the things that aren't as visible throughout this entire process. And I think that that's a lot of like the point of the particular square. I also think about just this last month. Oh my God, guys, it has been, I don't know about you, but like it has definitely been a very colorful Mercury retrograde for me. I feel like all of the things are they've been pretty standard, especially in Sagittarius. It's like, changing flights, rescheduling things, having to shift things in regards to my belief, going back to instruction, going back to things that, I've studied or things that I have taught that I'm going to be kind of teaching again, like across the board. It's all happened. So this Mercury retrograde that we've been in since the beginning of December, it has been in major aspect to Saturn as well as Jupiter. If you guys think about how the pre-shadow started, because Jupiter, is in opposition to Mercury, it has been a lot of big ideas and things that sound pretty and glamorous and exciting and really good news. And sometimes it's like almost too good to be true, or news that's been blown out of proportion, that we will see that Mercury-Jupiter opposition 3 times throughout the retrograde cycle, pre-retrograde and then post-shadow. We've also seen Mercury square Saturn, and where it's been like, okay, we went from expansion to contraction really quick. Or a big story comes out, this is how I've seen it, a big story comes out in the world, and then it almost like gets swept under the rug. You know, so it's like maybe it has like a day or two of headlines, and then all of a sudden, you know, some new news cycle is coming through, and then we don't really hear as much about it. So this has also been kind of like stimulating the Jupiter-Saturn square. And in the sign of Sagittarius, it's been global situations. It's been big themes revolving around traveling and airplanes. I mean, recently we heard about another major airplane crash that was kind of connected to, I believe it was Syria and the Assad regime. We also have seen this manifest as, you know, big potential court cases or things revolving, you know, the narrative of things connecting to Pisces. So it can be about, you know, kind of global themes with immigration. It can be religious themes. It can also be, you know, stuff revolving around information connecting to weather. So all of this stuff has been getting kicked up because we have had a mutable T-square happening throughout the retrograde, unless, you know, you take into consideration the day that the moon's in Virgo, and then you've got a grand mutable cross. The irony is that whether you look at Jupiter square Saturn or Mercury square Saturn, Saturn is still like I said, he's like Oz. There's something going on behind the curtains that we can't see. And in Pisces, you know, we're going to see Saturn and Neptune now. They're moving forward. So in 2025, you know, in the spring and the summer, we're going to see these two planets change signs. And that means that whatever has been wrapping up, ending, dissolving, hidden, what's been emotional, what's been sad, what's been depressing, is in a way temporarily going to be lifted because they're going to leave this sign. So really, I think that, you know, Mercury's connection to Jupiter, Jupiter's connection to Saturn has been about how we are all looking at the themes of release, surrendering, letting go, you know, healing, stepping away, resting, recuperating. And that's just kind of further brought on by the Mercury retrograde. So I thought that was interesting. Some things that have kind of happened more so recently, and as I'm filming this, it's the beginning of December, so I still don't know what's going to manifest with the square. I can only talk about what has happened in the past, what is now happening as we're building into this square, and what may manifest. Guys, I mean, come on, since the last time that we had the square that started in August, we had massive storms that has happened all over the world, but you know, I'm just thinking, you know, specifically here in the United States, through the Carolinas and parts of the South, major flooding, all kinds of issues, post, you know, obviously hurricanes. We've had major, you know, like communities that were just devastated by the water. Saturn in the sign of Pisces, lack of water containment, barriers, issues also with dams, with levees, anything revolving also around support to people who then become homeless, or, you know, kind of governing in some of those situations. And then all of a sudden, certain communities become lawless with Jupiter square Saturn. Scary stuff. I know there's been extreme weather all around the world. I know in the Pacific Northwest, we saw some major cold fronts. We've seen some other things that have been happening that's extreme weather everywhere. I mean, every time I'm looking at the news or I'm seeing stuff that's international, one of the big themes that I keep seeing is flooding, excess storms, and things of that nature. And that's very Pisces. I think we're also going to see a continuation of censorship issues. This time around, it actually might be a little bit more intense because Saturn is direct. And so we can definitely see some people who are having some major fall off with, you know, following and, you know, kind of engagement. It can also be about people who are having their channels or their websites or other things kind of like throttled. And shadow banning and stuff like that can be happening. I could definitely see that as, you know, Saturn wants to kind of restrict, and it doesn't want to be seen as being restrictive. So I'm wondering, like, are we going to hear some stuff about social media platforms who are supposedly more free speech oriented, but people are going to be kind of complaining and talking about how they're noticing even in some of those arenas that it's not growing. And Jupiter and Gemini could be like podcasts. It could be about, you know, your Twitter, your YouTube, anything revolving around a blog or something that you're writing, and like kind of wondering, like, why is this not getting visibility? Why is it not growing? Well, you know, you may have Jupiter square Saturn to blame.
But it will be harder to see some of these things. And so I kind of like wonder, you know, like I said, if it's going to be things that are going to be impacting media sites that are supposedly more free. So I'm watching like what goes on with Rumble. I'm watching what goes on with X. I'm wondering if there is going to be another kind of strike down on a specific media company. I also feel like this could be about major changes happening revolving around you know, major news stations, and like a lot of the major news stations and like they're declining in networks, they're declining numbers, and how that has been happening as a result of like some of the narratives and things that have been kind of coming out. You know, there's been, and people have commented on this, but there's been little to no coverage about some of the stuff that's been going on with like all the drone activity on the East Coast. I'm in Texas. I don't live there. I have been reading about it. I have been seeing it. People saying that there's like drones supposedly the size of cars that I think they're seeing in New Jersey. Stuff that's literally in the sky for hours. It comes and then it goes. If you have any information about that, I'd love to hear about it. It's kind of hard. I don't want to speculate because of things that I'm just reading off of random people's like, you know, comments and stuff on the internet. But I have seen enough to know that that is definitely happening. And I think what's weird is that there's little to no coverage. And so that is part of the Saturn-Jupiter square. You will see that there is going to be some oversight or over kind of limitation or wanting to kind of flood the media or kind of hide things when it comes to new emerging information, right? Jupiter and Gemini. And Jupiter and Gemini could literally be about like airspace. It could be about laws in airspace. Themes revolving around what we have access to, what we know, what we can see. And also like, you know, what's really going on. It's going to be hard to say. I could see Saturn and Pisces is like kind of, I've said this before, but like shadow government stuff. I have seen, and I have dug through some of the cases and some of the files and some of like the public conversations revolving around aliens. And it's interesting to me that there has been a number of admissions saying, yeah, you know, the United States doesn't know who's involved. I'm not saying I believe that, but, you know, we don't know who's involved, and like other countries or other shadow governments who have kind of connection to this technology could be flying things that have been reverse engineered and they look like aliens, right? Or it looks like there's something that's like, you know, coming down from the sky that could abduct people, but we don't really know who it is. Obviously, Jupiter square Saturn can tell little white lies, and it could say, well, you know, we don't know. So it may not be telling the whole truth. It may be omitting some information or some knowledge and kind of trying to keep things a little bit more secret. Now, we've also seen some other stuff, which I contribute also to Pluto and Aquarius. I wouldn't say this all is specifically because of Jupiter square Saturn, but there are some decent examples. Recently, in the last couple of weeks, we saw a very short but a very public you know, decision for there to be martial law in South Korea. And, you know, Saturn was squaring, coming into the square of Jupiter. We see like the leadership that's like climbing over walls, I think, in some of the government buildings while he was streaming it live on social media, freaking out, you know, giving interviews saying, hey, we're going into full martial law. Like, I'm going to, you know, do this and shut down the media and everything to kind of like help free the country. Once again, not saying I agree with that, but that's what happened. Come to find out, you know, supposedly his wife was going to be like investigated for corruption. And like, I think he realized what might have been happening, or that could be, to be fair, the narrative that the media is putting out. Hey, this guy's crazy. He's corrupt. His wife's corrupt. He's saying he's going to free the country. You know, I don't live there, so I don't know, but I'm trying to be Jupiter and Gemini right now and go, well, I could see both sides of the situation. It could be painted that way. So I want to know more information. If you guys know anything about that, let me know. I've been following some journalists that are connected to that area. And it's kind of hard to get some clarity on that. So I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can tell you that they voted against it. They said that they were going to overturn the martial law. And I'm still kind of following the story. Anyway, but that's like censorship and social media involvement and trying to hide things and kind of like corruption that could be coming both from Saturn, but as well as Pluto and Aquarius. We currently have unrest going on in the Middle East. Obviously, that's not new, but now we're hearing less about Palestine. We're hearing more about Syria. And recently, we hear about a plane that went down involving, you know, Syrian leadership and like the Syrian family, supposedly. I don't know if they're alive. I heard conflicting reports, so they were saying that some of those parties may have gone to Russia. But we do see lots of tension going on in Syria and the Middle East. Obviously, we're also hearing about canceled elections in Romania. I think there's some U.S. involvement there. I'm not going to speculate beyond that, but Jupiter can be about the election process, laws, communities getting involved and having a voice. And that square to Saturn means that there could be some overshadowing something, trying to get involved and limit people's ability to communicate and speak freely. We're also seeing major power shifts going on and some stuff in Georgia. So, there is some kind of limitation to freedom of communication and some kind of power and control issues. We, in Syria, though, are experiencing all kinds of stuff going on with the collapse of the Assad regime. Obviously, if you don't know a lot about that, I would say go and do your research. But this is going to leave Syria's fate, obviously, to be determined. I think that there is going to be some major religious crisis there for Christians because you have obviously now a flood of other countries that have other extreme religious beliefs that are now going to be essentially wanting to get rid of people who are practicing a certain religion that they may not agree with. And so, unfortunately, part of like the Jupiter square Saturn can definitely be about like some kind of genocide. We can also see that this could be about some limitation of being able to have access or having communities or practicing a specific religion. And hey, Pisces is definitely associated with Catholicism and Christianity and those particular kind of religions specifically. So that's concerning. I think that, we're also seeing in this last week or two, the French government has toppled. Macron is saying he's going to stand in until, the government can come in and they can kind of reassess and kind of rebuild some things. But we have, a constantly changing story revolving around what's going to be happening with leadership in France. Is it part of also the Pluto return? I mean, we're having the same transits that we had during the American and the French Revolution. So there could be some correlations there with, Pluto kind of lingering from Capricorn into Aquarius. We're seeing lots of economic challenges in places like Germany, France, and Italy, having major economic downturns, rising debt, and budget issues. But that is not limited to just parts of Europe. We're seeing this all over the world because of inflation. We're also seeing this in America, major, conflicts in discussions and philosophies revolving around leadership, Saturn, and our beliefs when it comes to wealth and resources and laws. So in recent weeks, after the election, we're hearing about, this new Department of Government Efficiency that's being put together. Obviously, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon, so that's an interesting pairing. Claiming to come out, and they've started, a Twitter account. They're going to be now sharing information regularly with the United States citizens, letting people know how they are trimming the fat, literally Saturn square Jupiter, trimming the fat and rolling back, anywhere where we're having some kind of government waste, spending waste. And they're going to be publishing it, they're going to be sharing it, they're going to be putting it on social media and letting people know things that they did not know that our tax dollars were being kind of allocated towards. Interesting stuff. So that's like the exposure side of Saturn. We've got changes in global conversations regarding immigration. Honestly, there's too many countries to even list in regards to where this is going on. We've heard a lot of back and forth with the United States and Mexico. No, Mexico is saying that they're going to kind of change something about their immigration involvement with people crossing the border, and that they want to now be involved with stopping a lot of the drugs and other things coming through the cartels in the southern border, but also being strong in their position when it comes to potential threats for tariffs. Same thing that we're seeing recently also in Canada. We're seeing that recently the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau has met and discussed and talked with Trump. Obviously, there's been lots of interesting kind of conversations that have been coming up where there's been this debate revolving around his belief in regards to the money that we are actually spending and kind of giving to Canada. And what should or should not be the United States, kind of like responsibility financially for that country, and also our contribution to like a lot of other places. So that can also be the Jupiter-Saturn square, where it's like a meeting of the minds when it comes to old leadership and new changing perspectives and growth when it can come to, you know, countries' laws and immigration and funding and, you know, kind of economic stuff in general. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of pages that have been court mandated set to be released regarding pharma and hidden truths about the V word, if you guys know what I'm saying, and undisclosed reactions and effects relating to these things. Probably didn't hear this on the news, but this is actually something that's going on right now. And there is going to be lots of new information that is going to be coming out that has been hidden and or redacted. So now we are reviewing and returning and kind of looking at what we thought we knew, what we were told, what we were educated on, what the media has said, versus what has actually been kind of hiding behind closed doors all along. I think a lot of this has been connected also to the Mercury retrograde, you know, court cases, major decisions, things like that, stuff that gets overturned, trying to force Saturn to take accountability for, you know, what it has kind of done over these last few years. And Saturn in Pisces can be very much about the tie between, you know, government and secret programs, as well as the pharmaceutical companies and what's been happening internationally. So I'll just leave it at that. I want to leave this on a positive note though, and something that I do think is cool that has happened right around the time of this up and coming Jupiter square Saturn is Notre Dame reopened. And obviously Pisces is churches. So that made some pretty significant kind of headlines. We saw people from, you know, all over the world in politics and, you know, just like well-known faces that were meeting in France, obviously, for the reopening of Notre Dame. And so, you know, maybe the Jupiter square Saturn is basically saying, you know, the changing narrative that's like, actually, no, you know, we want to, you know, be talking positively about this preserved, obviously historic church. And, you know, maybe people are learning to be a little bit more optimistic about the future when it comes to religious spaces and places, when it comes to preserving things that are historical, and things of that nature. And it was really cool to see the videos of like all of the bells ringing in Notre Dame. I feel like that in itself is also just like a really good vibration. If you guys know anything about like bells and chimes and things like that, it's meant to break up stagnant, negative, heavy energy. It's meant to dispel evil and negativity, which sometimes Saturn can be associated with that. Pluto can too. But I think that the Jupiter square has been more about this being like a sign or a symbol of what is to come, that we are dispelling the darkness, that we are dispelling things that have been heavy and kind of negative or kind of, yeah, kind of like evil feeling. And maybe it's helping us be a little bit more optimistic about the future moving forward. But what's happened for you with the Jupiter-Saturn square? I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what houses this is taking place in, or if you have a Jupiter-Saturn square natally, how you've navigated that. All right, so before I let you guys go, I do want to talk about where this is happening for all of the 12 rising signs. Just remember that this is going to be taking place at 14 degrees. So if you have anything 13, 14, 15 degrees, this is where you're going to want to really pay attention. I like to do whole sign readings on my channel. You know, if you guys ever have a one-on-one reading with me, or if you come and hang out and get a reading on Friday nights, I use Placidus. I use whole sign because it's easier for people. I know there's a lot of whole sign versus Placidus discussion. That's another video for another day. I feel like both have a lot of importance in terms of what you can see with both systems. But if you do not want to use whole sign, then you just need to look at your chart and you need to see where is 14 degrees of Gemini and Pisces. It might have to listen to more than one sign, but you can listen to your rising, your sun, and your moon to kind of get a well-rounded kind of prediction. And think back, like I said, to what's been kind of going on since August. And we're going to be kind of going back and forth with this square until we get into about June of 2025. And I'll have another video for you guys then. All right, so with that being said, let's start with my Aries and Aries rising. You guys have been grappling with Saturn and Pisces in your 12th house, squaring Jupiter in Gemini in your 3rd. My view on this is that you guys are learning to listen more. You're learning to pause and reflect. There has been a real emphasis, especially like the last couple weeks with the Mercury retrograde, to recognize and realize that maybe you don't know everything. And I think it's more about educational pursuits. Travel, it can be about religion, it can be about global kind of themes. And there is this need to reflect and be like, you know what am I willing to kind of let go of? What am I willing to complete? And I think the Jupiter retrograde in Gemini means that you're having to kind of really sit on something or sleep on something or strategize a little bit longer before you plan a trip, you go back to school, maybe before you decide to move, maybe before you have some kind of like new, some new thing that you're learning basically. And this can represent some challenges in communication, some setbacks, some delays of communication. And I would just say pray on it, sleep on it. Meditate, reflect, anything that is going to really work with Saturn in your 12th house and help give you some kind of clarity. And if you don't have clarity, then Jupiter in the third is like reading a self-help book, going for a walk, journaling, learning, to read tarot or some kind of divination to give yourself some clarity and give you a little bit more of a different kind of perspective, I guess I would say, some kind of duality, when it comes to Gemini. All right, so we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You guys are experiencing Jupiter squares Saturn. So you've got Jupiter in Gemini in your second house of money, resources, self-esteem, and it is in a square again with Saturn and Pisces in your 11th house. All right, so here's the deal, right? For you guys, there is this kind of tug of war that's going on between your finances and your goals. And a lot of this is about making your dreams a reality, making your goals a reality. And whether that's how much money you want to make, what you want to be able to spend, what you can afford. It can also be very much about self-esteem with Jupiter in the second house, learning to feel more confident, learning to kind of feel good in your skin. And whether or not you're feeling positive about yourself because of lack of connection, community, support, and friends. Okay, so there can be like, okay, am I really feeling valued and considered by other people? Am I feeling like I'm being like left out, or I'm kind of like, isolated in some way? And like the impacts that could have on your self-esteem, or the impacts that could have on you financially if you're not feeling like you're being included. Now, Saturn in the 11th is also about the money that actually comes from your job. The second house is how you spend it. So there can be like an overabundance of spending, right? Jupiter in the second house, and you're spending on socializing, hanging out with people, getting together with others. Maybe you have people that need help. Maybe you have friends that are having birthdays and babies and holidays and weddings, and you're like, oh my God, I'm spending so much on, just participating and like kind of socializing and needing to make some serious decisions and commitments about your financial goals and how you're going to go about making money. That can definitely be a theme here. It's been very financial for you and Scorpio, Taurus, because you've had this ongoing Jupiter Mercury opposition in your 8th house. And I really feel like this is the time where you're getting clear about your goals. And there's been a lot of reworking something about joint resources or budgeting or kind of debt. And I really feel like this is about not tying your worth to how much money you make. Don't worry about that. Get clear more about what your goals are going to be. And maybe there is like a little bit of like a kind of slowing down or cutting back on some of the spending now that Jupiter is retrograde. All right, we've got Gemini and Gemini rising. This is a fun one for you, Gemini. Hang in there. Be optimistic. Keep your humor and your wits about you with Jupiter in your first. So Jupiter is in your first house. That's in a square with Saturn in your 10th house of career. So there is a side of you that is having to show up in the world and kind of put on your game face and be mature and commitment oriented and responsible. And then there's a side of you that like really wants freedom, wants to travel, wants to expand, does not want to feel tied down, right? And obviously having your 10th house Lord on your ascendant, there's more visibility on you right now. And so for some of you guys, that's starting a new job, taking a new responsibility, becoming a parent, having a new, even like a new status. For some of you guys, it can be like a status change in your relationships. And there is this push and pull. And there's probably going to be better results if you're more focused on what's going on with Saturn in your 10th house. Showing up, going to work, clocking in, being there, being responsible, taking care of things, getting all that done. Does it tame some of the fun and the adventurous energy of Jupiter, 100%. But I think right now it's just saying keep your eyes on the prize, be super focused and be optimistic that this period of being very work dedicated and focused on the development of your career and your responsibilities and where you're going will allow you in the future to have more freedom. It'll allow you to travel more, to have more money, and you will definitely see that the second half of next year. So it feels like you're kind of grinding things out, but I feel like it's going to be good for you. I definitely feel like there's been a lot of back and forth recently this last month with other people, with the retrograde that's been reinforcing it. And so for a lot of you guys, it's like relationship changes or going back and forth with a committed relationship or going into one in a more serious way, or relationships with people at work and a back and forth with, kind of somebody who you might feel like has just really been on your back. And Saturn in the 10th house, I will say, is good because this will teach you how to really climb the ladder and kind of get to where you want to go. The key is about really having a sense of vision for who or what you want to be out in the world. And without a sense of kind of faith in yourself or some kind of practice or self-connection, you're not going to be able to kind of see that clearly. So that inner dialogue is really important right now to kind of help guide you in terms of where you're going professionally. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Jupiter and Gemini in your 12th house, square Saturn and Pisces in your 9th. All right, guys. So Jupiter in your 12th house to me feels very like it's your guardian angel, right? Like there are some things coming to a close. It's a good thing. There's new things that are going to emerge for you next year. There is a sense of needing to pause and reflect. So it's actually good having Jupiter in the 12th house because it's reflecting the nature of Saturn and Pisces, where we're more a little bit kind of cautious and careful, and we definitely kind of feel our way into things. What's challenging is that, Jupiter in the 12th house could mean some of you guys are, taking time away from work, or maybe you are, needing to heal something, or there is something that you're needing to kind of pause and reflect on. Good for spirituality, good for learning, good for traveling. But the challenge is that it's squaring Saturn. So there's a lot of like, I want to travel, expand, and explore, but I have to go to school, but I have to go to work, but I'm having a hard time, kind of staying focused or staying committed. And so here where Saturn in the 9th house is like teachers, gurus, mentors, can be really helpful in navigating healthier habits. Getting yourself a meditation coach or a breathwork coach would be wonderful. Getting involved in like a spiritual practice where you have routine and you incorporate that somehow into your daily routine, or something that you do in the evenings. Could be something you read, could be meditation, whatever, would be really wonderful for a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings. And a lot of this is about keeping the faith, but doing it through some method of having a teacher, having an instructor, somebody who is going to show you the way. So you can start to integrate that and kind of have like a better faith system, and also be kind of trusting the universe that it's kind of guiding you, and being able to, I think, kind of rest on that in a way, all right? Especially as you're waiting for Jupiter to come into your sign next year, you guys are really going to see some very significant changes. Good luck. All right, we got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to be experiencing your second Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces transit. Jupiter's been expanding your 11th house of friends, goals, networks, and others, and it's coming into a square with Saturn in your 8th house, which is about intimacy, joint resources, endings, and psychological changes. For you guys, Jupiter in the 11th is great in theory in terms of expansion, especially within groups or, people online or something, in terms of connecting and learning with others. But it's been kind of thwarted with Saturn in the 8th. And I've heard more Leos and Leo risings telling me that it's been harder to make friends. It's been harder to get together with people, that there is some emotional blockages or things that are going privately on in your life with your psychological stuff, changes with finances, changes with relationships, as Saturn rules your 7th, that has been limiting your ability to connect with other people. And so for some of you guys now, it's like this awareness that's like, okay, I need community, I need others. And unless I communicate, Gemini, and speak up, people aren't really going to know what I need. This is also about changes that are happening for you on an emotional or psychological level and how that's impacting your interest or want to socialize or connect with people as well. You could be going through your own thing where you're grieving something or you're letting something go or you're kind of dealing with like a major transformation and you're not ready to share that with other people yet with Jupiter retrograde. You're not ready to bring friends or kind of allies in on things quite yet because you're still processing. So something I would say to all Leos is people aren't going to know you're going through something or you're hurting or you're grieving unless you tell them. If you tell them, if you communicate, people can be there for you, but equally it's about not pushing yourself to go back out and socialize until you're ready to talk about, I lost somebody or this relationship changed or I've been dealing with some anxiety or, you know, something's kind of going on that's kind of limiting your ability to feel like you can be really present in social situations. Obviously, think about what's been happening over the summertime. I think for some of you guys, it can just also be about this reevaluation of the people you have in your life and whether or not you feel like you have people who are there for you when you're going through it and taking note who is there for you when you're going through some difficult times. All right, we got Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys are experiencing Jupiter and Gemini in your house of career, coming back into a square with Saturn and Pisces in your house of relationships. My goodness, Virgo, you guys are the ones that are going to be feeling this the most. So I'm sending you lots of good vibes as you kind of complete the mutable cross here, especially if you have anything 13, 14, 15 degrees of Virgo. Oof. So let's talk positive, right? Positive is that Jupiter has been expanding your career and reputation house. So whether it's a new job, relocating for a job, having a new relationship status, having some kind of expansion professionally, these are good things. And you're going to continue to see that until really like the early summer of 2025. The challenge is that all of this expansion is coming at the cost of Saturn in your 7th. So some of you guys are like, I'm working so much, I can't date. Or, you know, I'm not always able to have dinner with my partner, or I'm not incentivized, I don't have it in me to go out and meet people. Or, you know, the career success is great, but it's coming at the cost of, you know, something that's impacting your relationship with your committed partner, or just one-on-one relationships in general. You know, it's going to be more active and loud because this is happening in angular houses. And then you add a Mercury retrograde in your 4th house, and it's been kind of like pouring, you know, kind of gasoline on the fire, where a lot of Virgos and Virgo risings have moved back home. You're visiting family, you're moving, there's something changing about your inner or your private world or with your family that is putting the pressure on relationship statuses and also kind of work as well. So I know a lot of you guys are frustrated, but the truth is right now in December, it's about getting grounded in your home space emotionally with your family, and like it's going to put the pressure on relationships in the process of that if something's not really meshing. So that way you can build the foundation, work on your relationships into the spring, and then really start to come into some of that career growth and success in the summer. But you got to deal with the emotions first. My thought on this is that it's really different for every Virgo. I'm seeing some Virgo risings that are finally like, I want a relationship, I want to commit, and they're using Saturn to their benefit. This can also be new clients, working with a therapist, getting an astrologer, a coach, somebody who can help you realize just how successful you can be with Jupiter in your 10th. For others, I've seen this manifest as, well, you know, we're selling our house, we're moving out, we're getting divorced, and the Jupiter-Saturn square is the change in the status. Saturn is the focal point of the squares the last month and even, you know, into December. So I would say everything comes down to Saturn. So, you know, do you have a therapist that's helping you? Do you have a partner that's supportive? Do you feel the lack of supportive relationship? Do you want someone? This is where you're learning to work with other people. And it's not in a relationship way, romantically. It could be clients, it could be some professional collaboration to be able to help grow and expand your career. And for a lot of you guys, that career growth is already coming. You're just like, it's just too much having to work with other people. So I feel you on that, but this is temporary. And my advice is, you know, you're going to be the most successful out in the world when you have the best partnerships by your side, when you have the best business partner, the best clients, when you have the best spouse, the best boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And even if you're not seeking relationships, some of you guys are going to say, you know what, I'm actually bypassing dating and relationships because my career is more important. That could be the Saturn transit as well. But yeah, I would say that some people are worth working with because they may actually help guide you or collaborate with you or support you to really have some of the growth that you're looking to achieve. I want to hear what's going on with you guys. You have to let me know. It's very, very colorful for Virgo and Virgo rising. All right, we got Libra and Libra rising. What's up, Libra? You guys are experiencing this Jupiter-Saturn square. So we've got Jupiter in your 9th house. So it's comfortable there. This is in the house of travel, learning, expansion, philosophy, publishing, legal stuff. And it's squaring Saturn in your 6th house of health, habits, daily routine, and pets. You guys know I always talk to the Libra risings and I can kind of give you some feedback. Maybe that's helpful. I've seen all of these things. We've had to reschedule an international flight with this square already. There has been delays in things revolving around me teaching. There has definitely been a need, I think, with Saturn in the 6th house to seek someone who can give me direction. It's been more manifesting as like Eastern health practitioners, acupuncturists, herbalists, Pilates teachers, people who can teach structure and form when it comes to health and wellness, and learning how to better navigate health through having a teacher or an instructor. You know, delays and issues also pertaining to traveling and pets. I've seen literally every manifestation of the square. So if I'm missing one, let me know. But for you guys, it's like, you know, Saturn in the 6th, it creates unnecessary work. It feels like a never-ending sense of workload. Sometimes issues with coworkers or in the office space or with your schedule. Sometimes it's health stuff and that, you know, health things are coming up, but the 6th house is about your habits and Pisces is emotional. So what's going on with your emotional habits? What's happening with your daily routines, how you're eating, how you're treating your body? Is it, you know, are these good habits, you know, and do you have room to share and teach other people, or are you lacking in these departments and is it impacting your ability to travel, go to school? You know, are you cutting back work to do some kind of training or, you know, education pursuit? Are you holding back maybe on, you know, teaching, traveling, or publishing? These are the things that I kind of see. You know, obviously Saturn is going to teach you to maintain some kind of schedule or pay attention to your emotions because they impact your health. So that's very, very important for you throughout this transit, Libra. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the 2nd Jupiter square Saturn. So we've got Jupiter in Gemini in your 8th house of joint resources, transformation, other people's money, anything revolving around like psychological stuff, inheritance, taxes, right? Death and endings. And it's squaring Saturn in Pisces in your 5th house of romance, creativity, self-expression, children, all that stuff. So Scorpio, I mean, essentially, you know, there has been a tug of war going on in these houses, which are financial, okay? And it's been very financial for you and for Taurus this last month because Mercury's retrograde in your money house and you're going, okay, I spent money on something, or I need to buy something, or I'm cutting back on what I'm spending, or I'm spending too much, and a back and forth with another person. So this could be, you know, trying to get an insurance claim filled, trying to get a refund, you know, trying to talk to your partner about a budget or what you're spending, and it's been coming into a square with Saturn. For others, this has represented a delay maybe that's been happening when it comes to like romance and dating. Saturn definitely can sometimes feel a little frosty in the 7th house when it comes to kind of connecting in the heart space. And maybe there's been a sense of holding off or holding back on dating or children, having kids, issues with children. And vulnerability. Jupiter in the 8th house can definitely be about kind of tuning into our inner vulnerability and being open to change. I've seen a lot, this is another sign where I've seen a lot of variations. I would just say if it's not about delays with, you know, dating, it can also be about being a little bit more cautious and careful when it comes to speculative investments. Not just throwing, you know, caution to the wind and investing in things. Actually, Saturn in the 5th is about being very conservative and being mindful that if you can be patient and wait for the right opportunity to invest or, you know, take money and invest money or make money, it can be very beneficial for you. However, Scorpio risings and Scorpio suns, listen to me. be very careful with money in December, because not only are you seeing this Mercury retrograde where things can definitely change and something that you thought was in the bag may not be, but then the squares to Saturn seem to kind of indicate that that can have an impact on you emotionally, that could affect your love life, that can also impact your relationship with a child, certainly spending, and resources connecting to children, and that can kind of come up here as well. The positive here is that what you're going to see is when we come out of this square, second half of next year, Jupiter's going to be in a water sign. It's going to trine your Scorpio placements and Saturn. So Scorpio, you're going to get a grand water trine basically for a short period of time in the fall. And that may be a time where it's like education, travel, relationships, pregnancy, things like that could be easier. It could be better. Getting married and things like that could be better because Jupiter is ceremonies, graduating. And don't beat yourself up too much if you're a creative or if you're self-employed and you have your own business. Obviously there could be some heaviness with expenses with the Jupiter square or taxes, but there can be a sense of being very critical as to whether or not you're doing good enough or if you're producing enough. And just be mindful of your finances with this transit. We've got Sag and Sag rising. What's up, Sag? All right, so you're going to feel this. I'm going to put that out there. You're going to feel this because Jupiter rules your chart. So you've got Jupiter that is now retrograde in your house of relationships. So you are reevaluating, reconnecting, reassessing, or directing something about your relationships with other people. This could be your marketplace if you offer or sell something. This could be your marriage. This could be a committed relationship. It could be a relationship with a sibling. It could also represent just your one-on-one relationships in general. And it's coming into friction with a square with Saturn in your house of home and family. So think about what's been going on basically since August. I've seen Sagittarius risings that are like, I really want to meet somebody and I think I need to move, right? Square to Saturn. I've seen some of you guys that are like, I have this relationship and, it could be growing and expanding in some way, but, there's some family issues or there's some housing issues or, dealing with the past and kind of processing that. And also, financial stuff, because Saturn rules your second house, that's been coming up between you and another person and home or property. So things like, well, do we just move in together because it could be more affordable? Do we go back and forth revolving around also like relationships with family members over, taking care of parents, home, property, estates, things like that. So there's like an ongoing storyline here. And my goodness, Sagittarius, with Mercury having been retrograde in your sign opposing Jupiter tells me that there's been a lot of back and forth in how you're communicating with another person. And it may have felt kind of topsy-turvy and stressful. Because it was in opposition to your chart ruler with mutual reception and squaring Saturn. So it means like it's been harder maybe to kind of keep the peace in some relationships with family. There's maybe been a little bit of like debate or back and forth about what you do with a home or who's going to take care of something at home or, even, property matters. Are we selling the house? Are we renting it? Are you buying me out or am I buying you out? That kind of stuff definitely kind of comes up with some of these oppositions and squares. And it's trying to find ways to merge your home life and your relationship life into one. And it almost seems like something in theory has got to give when in reality, you have to wait a little bit longer to meet that person, relocate, get married, move them in, make amends with the family. There's something that's still kind of going through the process. And I bet you dollars to donuts, you guys have been feeling it with this Mercury retrograde. And I think the squares to Saturn are basically saying like, you have to create a either physical foundation or an emotional foundation for yourself. There is a need to kind of finally reconcile and deal with the past or, some kind of family situation, undoing some of this stuff so you can kind of fully move forward. I remember this square, having this square in a transit, and it was like a time where I ended a relationship, decided I wanted to move. A couple months later, met my husband, and then all of a sudden my plans changed, and then I was moving somewhere else, and then, my relationship expanded. So I tell you that because a lot of you guys are going to be somewhere in that spectrum, one of those things happening. And when you're in it, it's hard to see. But when you come out of this square, you may be glad that you waited to get married or that you changed your relationship or that you decided to move or you said, no, I'm going to hunker down and stay here, which a lot of you guys are going to do with Saturn in your fourth house. And it will end up being better for you actually financially. Next year, you're going to see Jupiter in your 8th house of other people's money, investments, inheritance, that kind of stuff, trining Saturn. So you may feel like you have more money next year to move or buy a house. You may feel more confident merging with another person. These things will get easier once you're getting to like mid-2025, okay? I want to hear from you guys too. How is this manifesting for you? We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. All right, so you and Aquarius, put your helmets on. You've got Jupiter that is in Gemini in your 6th house of health and habits and work and routine, squaring Saturn in Pisces in your 3rd house. I've heard from a lot of Capricorn risings who have been telling me they've been having weird car stuff happening. I think that was the retrograde where it was squaring Saturn, where it was like unexpectedly losing mirrors, getting hit, people, kind of messing with your vehicles. That's been the Mercury retrograde square Saturn. But Jupiter also in the house of accidents and unexpected things or car problems could have kind of come up here as well. Saturn rules your chart. So your Saturn, so if it's in the 3rd house of learning, communication, traveling, siblings, also anything in regards to like media, social media, writing, learning is being challenged by Jupiter. If anything, I think, Jupiter is actually trying to get you to not be so rigid. It's trying to get you to evolve. It wants you to learn healthier habits. It wants you to be more productive. It wants you to get out and exercise. How, right? Obviously in Saturn or, Jupiter ways. For some of you guys, it's, breaking up your schedule and making time to go for a walk or going for a run or a bike ride. For others, it's trying to get you to read a book on health or wellness or productivity or listen to a podcast. But it can manifest in some challenging ways as well. Jupiter will make things feel bigger. So you're kind of like, there's more work, there's more of a need to pay attention to my health, there's more issues with coworkers, there's more issues with vehicles. And this is temporary, it will pass. And I really think what it's trying to get you to do is be mindful of your thoughts, how you think, what you say, what you believe in, and how you're communicating with some people as well. And maybe it's about being like a little bit more detail oriented, which you're pretty detail oriented, I'll give you that. But even more so than usual when it comes to navigating, moving vehicles, learning, and communication. Think about what's been happening since, August of this year. I think for a lot of you guys, from what I've seen, it's been kind of delays with moving or delays with figuring out, am I going to buy a car, or how you're communicating with some of your relatives and kind of navigating some, okay, do I say something or not situations. And Saturn's definitely teaching you where you need to speak up, but also where you need to listen and just bite your tongue and let the universe kind of handle the details for you. All right, so we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. What's up, Aquarius? You guys are experiencing your 2nd Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces. Well, Jupiter's in a fellow air sign, so that does work in your favor. Jupiter is moving through your 5th house of creativity, self-expression, having fun, romance, children. Great place to have a Jupiter transit. If anything, we party too much when Jupiter is in this sign, or we create too much. And Jupiter is squaring Saturn, and Saturn rules your chart. So as Saturn goes through Pisces in the 2nd house, there's a lot of, on one hand, very financial things happen, like trimming the fat, tightening up when it comes to a budget, eating less sometimes, being more mindful also of money waste, or maybe feeling the lack. We can feel a little bit tighter financially with this transit. And on the other hand, it can be about self-esteem, believing in yourself, feeling confident, feeling good, valuing yourself. And Saturn in the 2nd house will tighten things financially, so it can make it a little bit more challenging to go out, party, spend money at the bar, go to the casinos, have fun. Or if we're doubting ourselves, not feeling as optimistic or confident when it comes to meeting and dating other people and feeling lovable. So there is a tendency to kind of need to be mindful that if you have your own business, if you have hobbies, if you're doing something creative, we don't want to break the bank doing these things. And Saturn is saying, let's do some of this with less money, less time, less investment, even. And for some of you guys, it's big risk, big reward that you're willing to, risk spending a little bit of money on a creative hobby or starting your own business or even like in the market, but not too much, not money that you're not willing to lose. This is financial houses for you too, Aquarius, so I'd be really mindful of that. Do not allow there to be too many challenges when it comes to dating and whether or not you feel good enough. Be mindful of money and expenses pertaining to children. There can be like a lot of needing to spend on kids or needing to spend on kids' education or things for children. And you're maybe kind of looking at it being like, okay, the kids need less toys. We're scaling back this Christmas. We're not buying as much, That could be something else that you're potentially kind of considering as well. And you're learning to have fun without feeling like you have to spend an arm and a leg to kind of get there. And we have Pisces and Pisces rising. So this is an interesting one for you, Pisces, as Jupiter, which is your traditional ruler, is in Gemini, expanding your home kind of private life sector. And it's in a square with Saturn and Pisces in your first house. Interesting. I kind of feel like, and I would say this to any of the mutable signs, but things are loud when you have planets in angular houses. Okay. So naturally, Saturn in the first house, even if it's not an aspect to Jupiter, is like you expect more of yourself. There's more of a need to define your needs, to have boundaries. Maybe this is when it comes to your emotions, maybe when it comes to your goals, or just having more time to yourself and wanting to define who you are outside of your fourth house, your family, your parents, maybe your children. Maybe this is about being reluctant to expanding your home and moving or having a roommate, or you're going back and forth between two places. I've seen a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings with this square that it almost seems like any new home opportunity or change, even though it can be good, like renovating, relocating, bringing people into your home, there is this sense of being like not thrilled, right? Saturn in the first is like kind of grumpy, it's like it's not really feeling totally satisfied with some of the changes that are happening, or maybe you're feeling like it's not happening fast enough. The home hasn't built fast enough. The relocation isn't happening fast enough, or you're not entirely sure where you want to go. So you're practicing being conservative and careful before you really kind of make some of these bigger decisions when it comes to your home and your family life. Anyway, this has been magnified with a Mercury retrograde in your career zone. So for a lot of you guys, it's like a lot of, am I going back to work? Am I changing jobs? Is my status changing in some way? And that is ricocheting all over off of Saturn in your sign and Jupiter in your home base. So really this is a month in December that's like, what do you want? What's going to make you happy? Where do you draw the line? What do you want when it comes to your home and your living situation? What do you want when it comes to work? And to be honest with you, the expansion in your home or your family life or your kind of private life, it's coming, but it wants you to be more focused on what's happening in that part of your life. And whether that's staying home with your family more, or working from home, or moving or whatever, all of the changes that you'll see in your career and with yourself are likely going to stem from this. Most of you guys have had delays and setbacks with either moving or traveling though, from what I've seen. So you may have a little bit more of like a challenge with this over the holidays. You may feel like you want your own space outside of needing to be home or being with your family, or you want to do something different, or you want to be independent. And I would say give yourself a little bit of slack, because I do feel like this is going to give you an opportunity after the square to figure out more or less where you're wanting to kind of get settled, or what kind of a home life you want to be building. Or maybe you'll see as you're getting into the spring and summer, you have a place that feels like home and you can kind of commit to something there much more permanently. Well, I hope that was helpful for you guys in getting down to the nitty gritty of the, Jupiter square Saturn. Remember that with these transits, there is both a challenge, but also a gift. So try to see the silver lining as we go through this. This is all about finding balance between our needs for freedom and also our duties. So I hope that this video inspires you. I hope you guys can keep on keeping on and do this kind of cosmic dance where you're growing, but also standing your ground. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Any interaction with my channel really helps my channel grow, and I really appreciate it as we're getting closer and closer to 40,000 subscribers. So if you guys can help me reach that goal, that would be awesome. If you want to book a personal reading with me, or you want to see more about my work, check out my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Until next time, I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.